Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Drew Poppleton, Director of Postgraduate Planning and Experiential Education at Case Western Reserve University. Welcome to the fourth installment of Spartans Step Up, brought to you by the Alumni Association of CWRU. Today, our focus will be on career navigation in a COVID-19 world. We understand what a tumultuous time this is for everyone, really, but it's especially stressful for recent graduates and even more experienced alumni who are seeking employment right now due to the pandemic. So we hope that our conversation today will help give some folks some guidance and some tips to navigate this climate. I invite everyone to submit questions via the live stream or Facebook Live as we talk. And really quickly, before I introduce today's panelists, I encourage all of our viewers to register for our online career mentoring platform, CWRU Connect. You should see a web address for this on the screen. If you haven't joined Crew Connect yet, it's a fabulous tool to connect with fellow alumni, students, and faculty. We have all kinds of great communities set up in that system, and the technology itself makes it really easy to connect with folks, to chat, to set up informational interviews, etc. So please take some time to join after the webcast today. So I am pleased to have two alumni today joining me to discuss career navigation. Our first guest is Carmen Fontana. Carmen works for Centric Consulting and the practice lead in emerging tech space. Welcome, Carmen.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, Carmen. We also have with us Nancy Fink. Nancy is a director for the State of Maryland's Professional Outplacement Center. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
All right. So the way it's going to work is I'm going to ask each of you a question, and you'll have some time to answer that question. And then after that, we'll take questions from our viewers. So again, viewers, feel free to submit those questions via the live chat feature. So Nancy, we're going to start with you. So how would you describe the current employment situation out there, and what's the outlook? What are you seeing?
So I think if I had the answer to the outlook, I would be doing something vastly different. Without sounding really vague, I honestly don't know. I think we are absolutely in uncharted territory. Things have happened, obviously, that have never happened before. Our unemployment numbers are where they have not been since the Great Depression. And of course, the world has changed since the Great Depression, so we really can't compare. So understanding that things are uncertain and we don't know what's going to happen next, the best thing I think that people can do is to be their best self, to market themselves well, to use the time that they have if they are between successes, to make sure their skills are sharp, that their resume is polished, that I'm not going to say that they master technology, but they have a good handle on technology, because that is going forward how we are going to conduct the job acquisition process. So, somebody could be the best candidate and their resume could be unbelievable, but if they can't use Zoom, and that is how interviews are being conducted, or if they can use Zoom and they don't have a decent presence, then it's all for naught. So outlook-wise, I don't know, but from a candidate's point of view, making sure that they are using their time wisely, making sure that they are using LinkedIn, which to me is just the best vehicle out there to do virtual networking. I found out today about something they have. I should have known this, but on LinkedIn, on their jobs tab, you can do practice virtual interviews. How fabulous is that they can actually do that, review it, and then going forward have a sense of confidence that they may not be a pro, but they're not a novice either.
Thanks, Nancy. That's awesome. I actually wasn't aware of the virtual networking tool on LinkedIn, and I consider myself pretty up to date on that. So thank you.
Me too. So I was kind of slapping myself on that.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out. So Carmen, I want to turn to you. So you've been working from home for 10 years now. So this remote working stuff is nothing new to you. What tips do you have? What do you think our viewers should be thinking about in this current space as they plot their next career moves? And kind of what opportunities do you see digitally that maybe weren't there prior to this pandemic?
Yeah, with the shift to remote work, one of the things that has become advantageous for job seekers is that we're not bound by geography anymore. So that really opens up the opportunities that are out there for job seekers. So you're not just, your side of the city or your geography. You've got the whole country and maybe even the whole world to look for a job. So that opens up a tremendous amount of possibilities. That said, with the absence of physical interactions, your digital footprint becomes more and more important. And Nancy alluded to this for sure. But you need to spend more time working on your LinkedIn profile because you're not going to be going to happy hours and meeting people and networking. You're going to need to invest in virtual networking through LinkedIn, through Twitter, so various things, and incorporating strategies to meet people online. And then, even taking it a step further, yes, you have your Word resume, but maybe you need a website that tells your story in a way that's more rich. So with pictures and imagery and things of that nature, you have to really stand out digitally because you don't have the opportunity to stand out as a human being. So there's definitely some opportunities in terms of there's a wider job market, but there's also some things that you're going to have to do differently because of the remote work aspect.
Great, thank you. I know Nancy talked about that presence, and you alluded to it as well, that if people were used to having a presence, when you walked into a room or in a physical space, you're going to have to reproduce that virtually for people. And that takes some practice, right? It's not natural for everybody. And so using tools like LinkedIn, I know within our office, we have a service called Big Interview, which allows students and alumni to practice their interviewing skills, which can be good, and you can record it and kind of get some feedback. So really like those tips. So I'm going to turn.
I think the recording part is very important because some of the little habits that you have in person that aren't magnified, they become very magnified in a virtual environment. So being able to watch yourself, like the tools you mentioned, is so important. And you have to emote more too when you're virtual versus in person because that motion doesn't translate as well across the screen. So you have to almost overdo it. So that's why that practice that you mentioned is so important.
Yeah, I know reviewing some of the recorded Zoom sessions that we've had over these past few months can be pretty telling in terms of those quirks and tics that you didn't know you had. So thank you.
Right.
I want to turn quickly to some of the questions that are coming in. So one is about the hidden job market. So that's a term that we've all heard of, and it's used to describe jobs that aren't advertised or posted online. So Nancy, how do you recommend tapping into that hidden job market?
So I will preach what I've been preaching for a lot of years, and Drew, I'm sure you preach this too, that networking is the single best way to find jobs in the hidden and the not so hidden job market. So, I think now the hidden job market, I think, is almost the not yet discovered job market because, if 4 months ago, if somebody said contact tracing, people wouldn't even have known what a contact tracer was. Right. So I think we are seeing jobs evolve now that didn't exist 4 months ago. So how do you find out about those? You talk to people. You're on LinkedIn. You're not a pest, but you're persistent. You reach out to people with whom you've worked. My favorite is volunteering, finding a cause or an organization about which you're passionate and saying, hey, do you need somebody to work a few hours a week? And people get to know you. They get to know your values, kind of who you are. And that goes so far. As a matter of fact, I just incorporated this quote in a presentation I'm doing on Monday from a professor at Harvard, and talking about what Google is looking for, and basically it's attitude. Can you do the job? Do you have the emotional intelligence? So, how do you find the jobs? You talk to people and you make sure that your networking message is not, oh, pity me, I was laid off along with a million other Americans. It's, yes, this is a turbulent time, but I'm taking this time to re-examine my priorities, and I've done some soul searching, and I would much rather talk to somebody like that than somebody who has a really negative vibe.
I couldn't agree more, Nancy. I think that's so important, that even if it's a stressful time and you're feeling kind of down, you have to approach your search, you have to approach networking with that positive attitude, with that energy, because if you don't, even if you don't think you're being negative, it creeps through, right? People can feel it. They can feel it in your email communication, when you're on a Zoom call. So you really kind of have to give yourself that pep talk when you engage in that work. So I think that's really important. And, I'd say too, I think that with the hidden job market, what we're not saying is that you shouldn't still apply for those existing positions online. You have to do that, right? Go ahead and apply for those, but don't settle with just that. Do that extra networking. Use tools like Crew Connect to connect with alumni and others who are open to chatting with you. So excellent advice. Thank you.
And Drew, if I can add one more thing, because I feel like I'm a LinkedIn evangelist. For those people who are not using the alumni feature on LinkedIn, it is, when I do my sessions, out of 40 people, I usually have 5 or 6, and I work with professionals who should know better. Maybe 5 or 6 know about it, and it's on LinkedIn. All you have to do is click on your education, and then it'll go to alumni, and I'm in the DC area. It's going to tell me who is here and who my our shared connections are. And if, for example, I want to work at a particular organization, I might be able to scroll through and find someone who works there. We might share a few connections. I can reach out to that person, and it's a wonderful way to lay the groundwork, and you have that Case Western Reserve University education in common.
Yeah, awesome. Another great tip. Thank you. So, Carmen, I think another thing that this pandemic has maybe caused for people is a little bit of reflection, and some folks might say, geez, maybe now is the time that I look to switch industries or pivot in my career. Maybe what they're currently doing isn't the best for them, and so they're maybe looking to make a change. So for folks thinking about that, what advice might you have for them?
Yeah, start with what skills do you have that are transferable across a variety of things. Are you an excellent communicator? Are you a PowerPoint whiz? Those are kind of fundamental skills that transfer no matter where. So take inventory of that. And then look at, hey, what gets you excited? What's interesting to you? You don't necessarily have to be a guru at it, but when you see a headline about X, Y, and Z, do your eyes, ears perk up? And then the third thing is, what careers have perhaps a shorter runway to pivot to versus others? So, for instance, what I mean by that is an anesthesiologist. That's a great career, pays well, it's interesting work, but it takes years and years to become an anesthesiologist. So if you're looking for a career pivot, that's probably not one that's going to pay off right away. But there's a variety of fields out there that are very new, very emerging, and there's a lower barrier of entry. So, I work in the tech sector. So I'm thinking about things like artificial intelligence, data science, cloud, blockchain. These are all newer things, and there's nobody out there with 20 years of experience in it. Most people have 2 or 3 on average. So you can get up to speed a lot quicker. The other thing that's nice about these emerging careers is there's a lot of great educational resources out there that are either free or cheap. So if you are interested in pivoting to the AI field, there's abundance of free coursework online. CASE has, very reasonable programs on AI. There's just a lot of resources out there that can be done remotely and get you up to speed and competitive with other people in the space very quickly. So inventory what you're good at. Think about what brings you passion, and then look at what has a shorter runway to being competitive in the job market. Those are kind of the 3 tips I would give people.
Great. Thank you, Carmen. So Nancy, Carmen talked a little bit about some highly technical areas. And so obviously brushing up on some of your technical skills is a must, but soft skills are still very much in demand and are absolutely essential for people to market when they're out there, seeking employment. So in your work, what would you say are some of the top soft skills that people should be focusing on and really marketing to employers?
So you hit the nail on the head. And I have a colleague who has said that we're not calling them soft skills, we're calling them essential skills, which I love.
Yes. Because,
they have long been downplayed. Like, well, you have those soft skills. Now they're essential skills, and I think Carmen mentioned this. Things that might not have been as important before in this virtual environment are so much more important. Can that personality come through? Are you excited about what you do? Are you passionate about it? I understand that not everyone's going to have the same level of enthusiasm as I do, but at some level you have to indicate to a prospective employer that this is what you want to do, even if maybe it's not what you want to do, even if it's a bridge job to get you to that next level. So certainly that communication piece, and not just the words, but the nonverbal, the body language, all of that, I would say that is absolutely top tier. The other thing I would add, Carmen mentioned some assessments, and I discovered one not too long ago, and it's free, which is my favorite word. StrengthsFinder costs money. It's a fabulous tool put out by the Gallup organization. But for folks who are out of work, of course, we're always looking for things that are at no cost. So High 5 test. So it's high, H-I-G-H, 5, numeral 5 test. And it is a free assessment. It is based on StrengthsFinder. And I took it, and I wish I had the results in front of me. It came up with my top 5 words to describe me. And I thought, wow, I never would have chosen those words exactly. But as I'm marketing myself, if I ever choose to do that, those would be the 5 words that I would use. So, that certainly gets to those essential skills, the ones that they're not concrete, but they're probably the ones that are going to get you the job.
Thanks, Nancy. And I just want to underscore that those assessments, they can be very powerful and helpful. And they're not just for people starting out in their career, right? They can be valuable for people who, again, are many, many years in and want to sort of reevaluate. They're incredibly helpful. So thank you for that. I also wanted to add on the soft skills discussion, which I'm also in favor of essential skills as well. I very much prefer that term. But one thing I know when I work with students and alumni that I try to convey to them is that you still have to provide evidence of those soft skills, right? When you're marketing yourself, you can't just say, I'm a great communicator, right? You have to provide evidence. So think of where in your experience you can provide evidence of that so that you're convincing the audience, whomever it is, that you indeed have those essential skills and they're robust and valuable. So thank you.
And if I could add to that briefly, we did a small session the other day, and we did a breakout room in Zoom, and one of our customers said, "I just can't brag." My comment was, first of all, it's not bragging if you've done it, and it goes against type because we've been brought up to be humble. Mm-hmm. So I gave her, and then I gave the whole group, an acronym which I'm glad to share, and it is SCAR-Q, and it helps people in crafting their stories so that those non-concrete skills can come to life. So it is situation, challenge, action, result, and the most important is that Q, which is quantified.
Yes.
So that as people are telling their stories, because yes, stories are the most important, if they use that as a guideline, it works in a resume, it works for a LinkedIn profile, it works in tell me about yourself. It kind of keeps them on script, and it also makes them give that proof that they actually have what they claim they have.
Love it. Thank you. So, Carmen, we talked already about the fact that many people are now working from home or searching for jobs from home, and clearly a lot of advantages to that. But a disadvantage possibly is that sometimes it's hard to set boundaries when you're working from home. And what advice do you have for people and how to really maximize the situation and set some of those boundaries?
Yeah, as mentioned, I've worked from home about 10 years now. And if there's one thing I've struggled with the entire time is setting boundaries. It is easy to leave the office when your office is downtown. It is hard to leave the office when your office is, 5 feet from your living room or your bedroom. And it is important. Most people find themselves working more when they work remotely versus less. You would think it'd be the opposite because of all the distractions of at home. But what really happens is having a office that's nearby sets you up for one more email. Let me just get this document. Well, I've got some time on Saturday morning. I'll do this then. And it becomes a really bad cycle where you never turn off. And so some of the strategies I've employed is I look at each day, look at my calendar, first thing I look up, and I preserve time. So if I know I have an hour from 9 to 10 where I don't have any meetings, I block that time and I commit to myself, okay, that's when I'm going to exercise. Or I'm going to log off at 5 p.m., come hell or high water, even if things aren't done, because I know I need to get to my kids' soccer practice. And so you have to create those boundaries that you kind of have when you're in a physical space, but now that you're virtual, you have to be very intentional about that. Same with weekends. Preserve your weekends. I sometimes work weekends. We all do, right? But it's easy to get into the 7-day-a-week trap. Even if it's just an hour or two on a Saturday or Sunday feels like 10 hours on a Monday because it's your time to get away. So be really intentional. Do I have to work on this over the weekend? And if it's not a yes, I absolutely have to do it, it can wait till Monday. So really be thinking about carving out time during the week, shutting off each night at a given time, and then preserving those weekends. That will help you with the boundaries of working remotely.
Thanks, Carmen. Those are excellent tips, and I think you're right that more often than not, folks are working more than less from home, and it is difficult to create those separate spaces. So this next question, I'd like to hear from both of you, but I'll start with Nancy. Nancy, we talked a little bit about how important it is to stay positive during a job search, but it's understandably very difficult. So what tips might you have for people to stay positive, to maybe give themselves incentives or pats on the back along the way so that they maintain that positivity throughout the process?
So we just instituted something called a resiliency circle. And it's actually based on a book, and I don't have it in front of me. We want to say the author is Elizabeth White, and she wrote a book recently, Over 50 and Unemployed, something like that. And she talked about a resilience circle, and we did our little spin on it. The idea is to surround yourself with people, your own personal board of directors who, are not cheerleaders, but who give you that reality check. You're not damaged goods. The job lost you. You didn't lose the job. It just kind of, it's not rocket science, but making sure that you have people who will say, you know what, your time will come. It's just not the right time and place. Do what you need to do. Yes, you're entitled to have bad days, because I think we all have to recognize that. We can't all be positive every day. But to talk to other people, I think one of the things, and this certainly speaks to what Carmen was talking about working from home, is that this is a very solitary process. We're in our homes, we're practicing social distancing. So we don't have the benefit of seeing people and being with people and having coffee or cocktails or whatever. So virtually surrounding yourself with those people who say, yes, you have it. Or maybe even doing a 360 with 10 of your closest friends and just say, how do you think I am projecting my image? What do you think my strengths are? And then kind of getting all that feedback, which I'm sure is going to be pretty consistent from person to person. It's usually pretty enlightening for people, and they go, oh, you know what? I can do this. But I think, we have to recognize that it's not all lollipops and roses. There are going to be days when it's hard to get motivated, but that we all have to know what it is, what steps we need to take to move in the right direction.
I really like that idea of surrounding yourself with people who not only will support you and be constructive, but also be honest with you, right, about the areas in which you can improve. And I think that's great advice. And again, just to plug the Crew Connect, you can virtually join a space of fellow alumni and others, and very quickly create that resiliency circle. So thank you. Carmen, what tips do you have on this?
Yeah, Nancy's spot on. Creating community is so important right now. So she mentioned about people to lift you up, which I think is incredibly important. The other thing I would add to that is realize, job hunting's hard in general, but now we're doing it in a global pandemic. This is crazy town, right? Nobody has a way to navigate this. And so reaching out and just talking to people about the stress in your life, whether it's career navigation, whether it's just regular pandemic craziness. I know for me, just personally, just being able to share with people, my anxieties, my stresses related to, working at home with children on the foot, trying to teleeducate, all these things that are just new experiences for all. Just having somebody else to commiserate with is incredibly important. It makes me feel, realize that, hey, I'm not alone in this. Other people are feeling this. And I think because we are so isolated right now, we do get that feeling of, I must be the only person experiencing that. But in reality, we're all struggling right now, and we have to lift each other up and kind of validate the feelings that we're having, and then collectively try to reach up and be positive despite everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think it's obviously a lot harder to kind of bump into people at networking events and things like you might have prior to the pandemic. But I think if you're proactive in reaching out to people in some ways, via Zoom or phone, people might be actually more receptive to connecting because, a lot of us are craving some of that, social interaction a little bit more. And it's not, traveling somewhere, having the meeting, traveling back. So in some ways, it could actually be advantageous for people. So great tips again. I wanted to, one of our viewers commented on the discussion earlier about developing skills and noted that Toastmasters is an excellent resource for people if they're interested in toastmasters.org is the website. So if you're not familiar with that, that will help your public speaking skills. Check them out. And thanks to John Scabardonis for that comment. Let's see here. So we know that we've been talking a lot about this. Zoom and other platforms are becoming the new normal. And I know I experienced this, and I'm sure others do. There is such a thing as kind of Zoom fatigue, where, meeting after meeting each day is just very tiring. So, any sort of guidance on kind of the limiting yourself to a certain number of meetings per day on these platforms? I think it can be easy to kind of overextend yourself and then drain yourself along the way. So either of you can jump in on that.
Yeah, Zoom fatigue is real. We have experienced it and discussed it a lot at Centric, where I work. And we've kind of created some, unofficial parameters around when we use the video and when we just talk on the phone. Because being kind of on all day is exhausting. And when I mean on is, when you're on a video conference, it just feels like a little bit more like a performance than it would be in real life. And so that's tiring. So we try to preserve the video for situations that are going to be highly charged. So, talking to an employee about performance, talking about, a personnel issue or, things of that nature that where it's really important to get those visual cues from the people that you're speaking with. So I think that's really important time to use it. I also like to use it when it's the first or second time I'm meeting with, say, a new client, where I don't know them and I really want to get to know their personality and have them get to know mine. So those are, two of the areas where I absolutely try to use video. Other times when I may not use video, give myself a break and give the people on the other side, if it's a routine operational phone call with somebody I know very well, where I can pick up the nuances of their personality just by hearing audio, where I don't need to see their facial expression because I know them that well. Or the subject matter is just so bland or, day to day that I know there's not going to be issues. We just need to work through it. So reserve the video for when you really need it. And it's totally okay to turn the video off when you're not feeling it or the situation doesn't warrant it.
Thanks. I think that's really good advice, especially that last part about not feeling pressure to always use the video, that it's okay if you're having bad hair day or you just don't really want people to see you, you could still be there and present just via voice. And I think it's interesting. I know in higher ed, we use a lot of video Zoom, like almost every meeting that I have is video. And my wife is in a different space and she hardly ever uses video. So there can also be kind of cultural preferences depending on the kind of industry or organization you're in. And it may take, you kind of stepping in and saying, for this meeting, I'm not going to use video. And then maybe others say, hey, okay, Drew didn't use video this time. Maybe I don't have to. And maybe you can change the practice a little bit.
I like what Carmen said earlier. She used the word intentional. And I would say, I was taking notes as she was talking because Zoom is new to us. And I love the idea of having parameters and saying, yes, we're going to use it for this, but maybe we don't need to use it. And I think it just takes the pressure off because I second what you all are saying. Zoom fatigue is real. And when I have people who call and say, let's do a Zoom happy hour. And I'm like, no, I've been on Zoom all day. I don't, I want to turn the computer off and I'll have my glass of wine by myself.
For sure.
Yeah. So, one thing I've been thinking about is I feel like throughout this pandemic, it's been a time again for people to reflect on what they really value and what they want their work life to look like and how it intersects with their personal life. And so for a number of people, they might be approaching their job search looking for aspects very different from what they might have looked for prior to the pandemic. For instance, they might be looking for much greater flexibility, right? Or fewer hours. And so it can be, I think, stressful if you're looking for a job and also knowing that you want to try to have that conversation with a potential employer about flexibility, about, different hours. And sometimes that's made clear in position descriptions or interview processes, and sometimes it's not. So, Nancy, what advice would you give to candidates as they approach a job search about how to navigate that and how to stay committed to their values without, undermining their candidacy too early on?
So one of the things I would suggest, well, a couple of things, is as part of the research, whether they do it on LinkedIn or if they do it on Glassdoor, which of course, as a Case Western Reserve alum, I'm a little partial to get a sense of what the corporate culture is like. So, is it like the old Big Blue where, you had to do certain things, or is there flexibility, and what are people saying about it? So I think that's part of it, is knowing what you're getting into. The second piece is you don't want to show your cards too early. Don't walk into the interview and say, these are my demands, because again, you might be the best candidate. Let them fall in love with you. Let them say, I have to have this person. And then as they get more and more in love with you, then you can perhaps bring up, well, I'm looking for work-life balance. I'm looking to maybe telecommute 2 days a week, those kinds of things, but certainly not putting that out there right at the beginning. The other thing I would add is that as part of the process, some folks may have determined that they need additional skills to be competitive in the market as it stands today, which may not be the market tomorrow. So what I would encourage folks to do, I always feel like I'm giving away a huge government secret here, but the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, WIOA, is an act that it is relatively new, but it is based on previous legislation going back to the 80s, whereby a person who is unemployed kind of through no fault of their own, and there's a whole lot of folks who are in that position now, may be able to get skill enhancement training at no cost to them. Now, I don't want anybody saying, that Case Western Reserve lady said that I can get trained. But if anybody, WIOA, you can type it in and get all the pages and pages and pages of the act. But so as an example, if somebody has been a project manager for 20 years, but they've never gotten their PMP certification, what a cool time to do that, especially if maybe they are missing out on jobs because they don't have that PMP certification. And I don't know how it works in other parts of the country, but certainly in Maryland, it's usually the county partner or the American Job Center. They can begin their journey there, ask the question, and people don't ask the question. How do I get WIOA training? Am I eligible? Their fiscal year starts next week, July 1st. So there will be some money. And I encourage people to do that and talk about a great way to stay positive, to stay engaged. And also in an interview, when somebody says, so what have you been doing since you lost your job? Well, I'm enrolled in a PMP certification class. And that whole journey on self-improvement.
Great. Thanks, Nancy. So Carmen, in addition to adding, anything you have to add to what Nancy said, I guess I'm curious from your perspective, do you think employers in general are going to be a little bit more open or flexible moving forward? What do you anticipate?
Yeah, that's been incredibly fascinating to watch. We've got clients across a variety of different industries and geographies, and they have all pivoted to remote work basically overnight. And many of these organizations were very traditional, bricks and mortar. Everybody's there Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, no work from home. And now they're completely virtual. And what was most interesting is most of them are not planning to go back to the way it was. So they're either going to stay completely virtual or some kind of hybrid. And I think it's a very valid question as a job seeker is you can ask, don't demand like Nancy mentioned, but you can ask in kind of a roundabout way and say, tell me about how your company culture has changed because of the pandemic. How has your company changed how you work? And that can be very insightful. If they offer up, hey, we were very rigid and the pandemic has opened our eyes and now we're really embracing work from home and, really understanding that our people can be productive in a variety of manners, that's a good sign. If you've got a company that says, we're worried people aren't getting their job done, or I actually heard of one company that required their employees to have their video on all day long so they can just hop in to make sure people are at their computer. So obviously, if you hear things like that, or even lesser things where, there's a lot of concern about remote work because people might not, that's not a great environment. So you can definitely, ask those roundabout questions to understand the culture as well and how the culture may have changed because of the new world. And how that may fit into what you're looking for. I think that's the good point is that there's a lot more opportunity for that work-life flexibility. 10 years ago, my children were small and I was looking for opportunities that would allow me to work remotely because I was trying to balance, my husband's work schedule and my career and small children. And there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that. And so I'm so encouraged by how many companies are being much more flexible now and how many opportunities that will give for people, no matter where the stage of life they're in, to have that work-life balance that they deserve and they're looking for.
I think that's fantastic advice, Carmen. Asking those strategic, tactful questions can get you those answers, and then it prevents you from doing what Nancy said you don't want to do, which is lead with all sorts of demand. So I think those are two excellent pieces of advice. So we are at the end, and so I have one final question for each of you. It's the same question, and I'll start with Nancy. Nancy, is there a quote that motivates you or a person who inspires you that you're willing to share with the audience today?
There are a couple. One is Eleanor Roosevelt, do one thing every day that scares you. The other is former Army Chief of Staff, General Eric Shinseki, who says, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less. So I think both of those pretty diverse persons. There's a bunch more. Tom Friedman had a quote 9 years ago in the New York Times about what employers are looking for. And he said they're looking, and I think it's true now, folks who can invent, adapt, and reinvent their jobs every day in a world that changes faster than ever. So those are my words to live by.
I love them all, and so relevant right now. So thank you. Carmen, how about you?
So I am a lifelong runner. I actually was on the varsity cross country and track team way back when I was a Case student. And we have a saying in the running space, run the mile that you're in. So what's that mean? It means, when you toe the line at a marathon, if you are thinking about running 26 miles, that's a little overwhelming. So you have to take it 1 mile at a time. So focus on just doing this mile, one foot in front of the other, doing what you need to do in this mile. And if you run each mile, eventually they stack onto each other and you get to the finish line 26.2 miles away. And so I think that's a great saying no matter when. Definitely focus on what you can control right now. But I think particularly now in our really uncertain times, thinking too far in the ahead is just overwhelming because there's so much uncertainty. We don't know what the fall is looking like. What's school going to look like? What's my employer going to look like? What's my career prospects? What's the stock market? It's too much to think about all that at once. But what we can think about is what we're going to do today and this week, and just really compartmentalize it to the mile that we're in. And if we keep running 1 mile at a time, we'll eventually get there, and look back at the accomplishments, that all that we went through, the struggle, and feel like we deserve a medal around our necks, kind of our COVID medal, if you will. So we don't know where that finish line is, but if we do it 1 mile at a time, we'll get there.
Great. Thanks, Carmen. I'm a runner myself, so that definitely resonates with me. Great perspective. So thank you, Carmen and Nancy, both for offering your insight into what career navigation looks like midway through 2020. I know I learned a lot today. I'm sure our viewers did as well. Again, I encourage our viewers to register for Crew Connect to start networking with students, fellow alumni, and faculty. Again, the web address is listed below. Also, you can email Bradford W. Cruz, the Associate Vice President for Alumni Relations. His email address will appear at the end of the broadcast. He can provide you with information on how to register for this free platform. Also, our office, the Office of Postgraduate Planning and Experiential Education, does offer services to alumni for life. So if you are interested in connecting with someone in our office or accessing our resources, you can also contact Brad, and Brad will put you in touch with someone in our office. So thank you again so much for joining us today. I wish you all good health.